like for you all to think about is, what else do you want to know? And how can you participate in raising more awareness? So that's kind of like the driving force that we want you to take away from this evening. Is what else do you want to know, and how can you participate in raising more awareness?
I just wanted to ask one question before we go to this part. Kim's presentation I thought was excellent and delivered very beautifully, very poignantly. And I just wonder for people, for how many people was this fairly new information or information that filled gaps of information that you had before? Can you just raise your hand? It's kind of new.
That's good. That's a good question.
So what you're getting is a copy of the alternative vision for Shockoe Bottom that is available online at shockoebottom.blogspot.com so that you can see it in more detail. This printout literally comes from the site, so it should look familiar to you when you go there. But I wanted to say a couple things before I go into talking about the alternative plan. One of the great pleasures of being involved in the struggle all these years is every time I hear somebody else present the information and talk about the significance of Shockoe Bottom, the significance of the African burial ground, the significance of Black history to the broader culture and history of the United States, and the fact that it helps hammer home that we are really quite fortunate to be living in a city that can trace its evolution through all of what is significant about the United States. And that's, significant good, significant bad, significant awkward, and significant in terms of the way that we all have ideas about what this place represents to us. It's one of the most conflicted of countries in the world because of the fact that it lives on a body of ideals that from the beginning didn't apply to everything. And so our history has been one of struggle, continuous struggle, to either reach towards those ideals or hold those ideals up as something to aspire to, while people are going through the machinations of what that meant to people's daily lives from 1600s to the present, and not just to those of us who came here, but to those who were already here. So we're talking about monumental and huge kinds of shifts and assumptions and assertions, and we stand here, 400 years later, trying to make sense of it for us who are living right now and figure out how we're going to go forward from that history. And that's how the history should be empowering us to go forward. It is not that we are looking back in order to dwell on something, especially if you're thinking about dwelling as meaning something unproductive. But we are going back to try and understand. One of the things Kim has talked about the last 2 times I've heard her talk about Shockoe Bottom is the fact that she's reacquainting herself, she's regrounding herself in her history. There's lots she didn't know or didn't absorb, even though she was born and raised here. I was not born and raised here. I came here at the tender age of 28, more than 25 years ago. And for me, this was just the South and really weird. I came from Los Angeles. We don't know. In LA, we think we're the shiny new thing on the block. And when I got here, people called me Hollywood all the time, which was just like really weird because I was not into acting and whatever. But it's also a place that considers itself new and young. Los Angeles is a fairly young city. California sort of rides this idea of being sort of new and fresh and, the last thing to happen from the United States and its pioneer work. But we're in Richmond. Richmond represents about almost as old as it gets here. And this is our city. And the footprint alone in Shockoe Bottom, the original footprint of the city still exists. You may not know that. If you know that Shockoe Creek, which once existed there, 17th Street was the original First Street. The original footprint of the city went from 17th Street east towards Church Hill and was 4 blocks by 8 blocks. That was the whole thing. The creek was a significant and important landmark for the city. It was important because it was the culmination of all of Shockoe Valley, which is now where Interstate 95 runs through our city and goes across the river. We live in a place that is ancient and important right now, and it wouldn't be important right now, I think even if the Boulevard development property wasn't at stake. I think Shockoe Bottom has still been the focus of tremendous attention, and we are only in the last 20 years, but in particular in the last 5 or 6 years, really beginning to understand what is actually in Shockoe Bottom for us to discover and to tap into. And one of the things that I'm hearing more and more, and what I'm seeing in this iteration of this struggle to prevent the baseball stadium from being built in Shockoe Bottom, and really it's the stadium and the accompanying development as far as I'm concerned, is that this struggle has paved the way for many other people to discover what is important about Shockoe Bottom to them. There's been a significant article about the Jewish history of Shockoe Bottom that's come out since we started doing this. People are beginning to reach back and see the Quaker history that's down there, the Masonic history that's down there. If you look at the history of trade itself and business and transportation, it's Shockoe Bottom. Shockoe Bottom has the ability to tell this story. And the development that has been planned for this area has the capacity to wipe it out. If you really, really look at it, not just the pretty pictures, beautiful watercolors, I think they're really quite lovely. I haven't had time to do my own, and I've wanted to, and I hope that other people will do that. And that's one of the ways you can empower yourself and take this struggle in a different direction, in a better direction, as we seek to prevent this. But the proposal, as they have it, is so big that it will wipe out the possibility of being able to discover the rest of what Shockoe Bottom has to offer us, and it will wipe out what I think will be the longevity of economic development and cultural development in Shockoe Bottom going forward. A baseball stadium, which is going to be built at the height of our current standard of technology and engineering. Well, we hope it is built like that, right? The hotels, the amenities, the chain shopping centers and stores and things that are going to be built. These things have a shelf life, whereas our history does not. And the physical remains of the history that is there and the remains that we have not yet touched. There was a very good piece done by a guy named Terry Brock that alludes to the archaeology that is just beneath the ground. It's just beneath every site in Shockoe Bottom. And we are not necessarily, those of us who talk about it in this way, we're not saying that Shockoe Bottom can't be developed. But there are two things at stake. One is this history that we're talking about and our ability to get it before we lose it forever. And the other piece is process. The way that this proposal has been imposed upon the city demonstrates to us that we have to push back. If they're telling us that because they have the money and they have the contracts and they have the power and they have this, that they just get to do it, and we just sit here and let them do it, we don't even, push and say, no, you can't, or you need to wait, or you need to tell us more, we need to have more information. And that's happening now because we did that. That was not the intention. That is happening now because we have pushed and pushed and pushed over the last 10 years. Specifically the Virginia Defender newspaper and my radio show and all those people who have been doing work, the way that Janine has done her cultural work, the way that other people have taken the stories and created their own projects. There have been art projects that have been done. Those are the ways in which you reclaim the space and reassert your capacity to affect it and to make your voice heard. I don't have any special background that allows me or has trained me to do what I do around this issue. It was a realization that I had a right to, that I could assert myself, and that I could simply speak to it. And the more I learned about Shockoe Bottom, the more exciting I got. And it started with a presentation on Gabriel's Rebellion. That was the start for me. Everybody else will find their starting point and then take it forward. All right, I can editorialize for days. So let me talk about the alternate vision for Shockoe Bottom, because what it seeks to do, some people have been a little confused because we have been working with a lot of different people to sort of create a starting point alternative plan. It is not the definitive alternative plan, but we knew that we needed to give people something to look at and something to respond to and something that would give them a sense of what we were talking about what's important to be preserved and what is not the only option in terms of the plan that the mayor and Metro Richmond have presented. So the Shockoe Bottom alternative vision has two images. One is the one on the front, the first page, where it says the Sacred Ground Memorial District, which is a strictly working title for the area that we have identified as that which needs to be preserved absolutely. No development, no commercial development at all. It needs to be incorporated into what we are referring to as a memorial district or a memorial park. That is, allows for the potential construction of a museum, should the input go that way, for a park area that connects many aspects of Shockoe Bottom which are already walkable and will allow you to preserve those historic sites at a walkable scale. That means you can bring families. I love the fact that people say, well, if you don't want this, obviously all you want is chain link fence and concrete on the ground. Actually, no, that's not what I was thinking. We were thinking that a park would be a spectacular addition. The research is there also that economic development and property values go up around parklands. People want to live next to parks. Try and rent something around Forest Hill Park. The other thing is that we want the process around this area specifically to be a community vetted process. We do not want to present the ideas for how this should be memorialized to the people. We want the people to tell us what should be there. And I only say tell us because we have been a convener and a compiler, and we can do that and serve that purpose. And when I say the people, and I know that some of you have read this and heard this and may have different feelings about this, but in reference and in deference to the history of Black people in this country, and in relationship to this site in particular, we have stated that we profoundly believe that the ideas for the memorialization of this area should come from that community first. Some people say only, but I think that negates the fact that we're a bigger community than that. But I believe that from the Black community first, those ideas should come, because it was the Black community that was not permitted to have that kind of agency while these things were going on. It is a reassertion, it is a right to reclaim, it is a right to know, it is a right to determine. And I think that that is right and proper. I think that that is justice, and I don't think that hurts anyone. That's the process that we were going to be engaging going forward in terms of the memorialization. When you hear about community meetings related to Shockoe Bottom, there's going to be two purposes. One is that we are in a struggle to prevent the stadium from being built there. And the second is that we are in a community gathering process for getting those ideas. It isn't that we aren't going to accept ideas from anybody, but it is going to have to be understood. And I want people to take that to heart. Because I don't want to, me personally, I don't want to have to filter through things. Are they white? Are they Black? Is this the idea? Is this something else? I want people to take to heart the principle that we're talking about and then respectfully move forward through that, right? And there are all kinds of ways to do that. The larger plan on the back, I think that pen doesn't even there's another plan on the next page, and it's referred to as a vision for Shockoe Bottom. This plan was created by a more professional group of people, and I only say that to allude to the fact that there were some very specific skill sets that were brought to bear on the development of that plan. And they are people who are historians, they are architects, they are engineers, there are economics people, and other folk involved, and museum professionals and things like that. So they were involved in this because one of the things that they wanted to give to City Council was a representation of how this area could be developed that was different than the mayor's plan that was being put forward. So it does have some buildings in places where I might not want a building, but it's trying to demonstrate that there is a different way to go about this. And I think one of the most important parts of this particular plan is the fact that it involves what they call as an historic overlay district. And that essentially means a set of criteria that would be established that would guide the construction and the development of this area, very much the way that a National Historic designation or potentially a UNESCO World Heritage Site designation could do. I think you have to use all of those tools in order to really make them work, because private property is a significant issue for people, and is also tied up in the struggle around national identity in the United States. So, so this is specifically a tool for those officials who feel like they need to have something that demonstrates a reflection of the problems that the mayor's plan was trying to address in terms of infrastructure dynamics, and one of them involves Shockoe Creek and the floodplain remediation. The issue being that there have to be two systems running through. One has to take care of sewage, and the other one has to take care of stormwater drainage. And just I want to clarify a little bit that the baseball stadium itself, as it turns out, is actually supposed to be the device through which the floodplain problem is addressed. I don't know all the details, but I do know that part of it is that the concourse that goes around it is supposed to act as an emergency egress and what's the other word? Egress. For the area, and therefore they're actually looking at the construction of that stadium and the way that it's going to be placed in the ground as something that is going to help improve that situation. We have proposed, and we've talked to other people, and this is something that's been done in other cities, and there was another article that's been come out about it, is that we're saying that actually what would be better for this area would be if we actually reopened and raised Shockoe Creek. If you rebuild, or whatever the terminology would actually be, but if you bring Shockoe Creek back and obviously do it, in a way that it should be done, it gets to reconnect with the James River. It gets to channel floodwaters back into the James River, which does have this additional device of the flood wall. And it also would be a part of this park system as well. And it would also reassert the idea that Shockoe Bottom's history has also been dominated by its waterways. And Shockoe Creek and the James River, the intersection of them, they represent the start of this city. They represent the place where the city was born. So I think it's a very compelling idea, and I think it deserves consideration, and our understanding is that it wouldn't necessarily cost that much more than doing any other idea for addressing the floodplain issue than the stadium project. Now, we recognize that there's a jigsaw puzzle of development and deals that the mayor and the investors have put together in order to create the plan that they have put forward. And if any of you have seen the Richmond Times-Dispatch, and I believe also the Richmond Free Press, accepted the advertising money in order to run the two-page centerfold illustration in order to sort of make a single statement about how their development plan just solves everything. But I put it to you that we have many other issues that have to be solved, and one of them, again, has to do with respect for this history, because it means respect for people now, and the fact that there is another way to do this, and their process has been profoundly disrespectful of the citizens of this city. And so on that note, I'm not going to talk anymore, because we really did want more people, you people, to be able to ask questions and make your comments. And then we will be talking, as Lily mentioned before, about how you can continue to push this struggle forward and hopefully defeat this particular plan. the one thing that we are working towards specifically, the next opportunity for action is on Monday. At 5 o'clock, there's a vigil in front of City Council, in front of City Hall, that will go from 5 to 5:45, and then we will all go into the City Council meeting together with our signs and be a part of the proceedings. There's the possibility that the vote may not happen on Monday night, but it doesn't matter if it happens on Monday night, and we won't know if it's not going to happen on Monday night until we're there. So the best thing is to be there. This work can get tiring, but it doesn't matter. You got to do it anyway. Just like you all came out in this cold weather. So I'll stop there, and if you all have questions about this plan, please let me know.